The velvet curtain slid back, and the world stopped. The heavy brass hanger was empty. $85,000 of hand-stitched, unreleased prototype silk was gone. The boutique manager stood against the wall, shaking. She didn't need to check her records. The guilt was written all over her face. "Your sister," she whispered. "She was here 20 minutes ago. She said you ruined the design and she was taking it to fix it." My blood turned to ice. Morgan hadn't just stolen a wedding gown. She had stolen my entire career. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned around and walked out to my car. Before I tell you what I found when I drove to my parents' house, and the nuclear option I unleashed to get it back, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I read every single one. I drove to my parents' house, with a kind of tunnel vision I'd never experienced before. The speedometer crept past the limit, but I didn't care. My name is Gabrielle. I'm 28 years old, and for the last decade, I have been the invisible engine keeping this family running. I paid off their credit cards. I covered the mortgage when Dad's investments failed. I thought I was buying love, or at least respect. But as I slammed my car door and marched up the driveway, I realized I had only been buying their silence. I didn't knock. I used the key I paid for, and shoved the front door open. The sound of laughter died instantly. And there she was. Morgan was standing in the center of the living room, spinning slowly. The ivory silk of my prototype, the dress that was supposed to launch my independent career, swirled around her ankles. It was a masterpiece of architectural draping, worth $85,000, and my little sister was wearing it like a costume. But the real horror wasn't the dress. It was what she was holding. In her right hand, dangerously loose, was a glass of dark red wine. One slip, one stumble, and my future would be stained permanently. "Take it off," I said. My voice wasn't loud. It was dead. Morgan stopped spinning. She didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed, like I had interrupted a favorite TV show. "God, Gabrielle, don't start. You weren't even using it. It's not yours, Morgan. It's a prototype. Take it off. Now." My mother, Patricia, stepped out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She had that look on her face, the one she used when I refused to lend them money. A mix of pity and disappointment. "Gabrielle, honey, lower your voice. You're ruining the moment." Ruining the moment? She stole my intellectual property. She broke into my shop. "We didn't break in," my father, Robert, said from his recliner. He didn't even look up from his tablet. "We used the emergency key, the one you gave us for emergencies. And this is an emergency." Morgan's dress fitting was a disaster. She needed something spectacular. "You're her sister. You should be honored to help." I looked at them, really looked at them, and I felt something snap. It wasn't just anger. It was a terrifying clarity. This is the trap of normalized cruelty. They weren't acting this way because they were monsters in a movie. They were acting this way because for 28 years, I had trained them to. I had normalized my own exploitation. Every time I said it's okay when they took too much, every time I covered a bill without a thank you, I was teaching them that my boundaries were suggestions and my assets were community property. They weren't calm because they were innocent. They were calm because they genuinely didn't see me as a person. To them, I was just a resource, a vending machine that had suddenly stopped dispensing product. "It's an $85,000 contract," I said, my voice shaking. "If that dress is damaged, I lose everything." Morgan took a sip of wine, her eyes locking with mine. "A challenge. Well, it fits me better anyway. You're too stiff for this design. It needs someone with life." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the dress off her, but I knew that if I touched her, they would call the police and paint me as the aggressor. I was the unstable, creative. She was the golden child. Physical force was a trap. So I did the only thing that would matter in the world. I actually lived in the professional world. I pulled out my phone. "What are you doing?" Patricia asked, stepping forward. I didn't answer. I raised the camera and snapped 3 high-resolution photos. One of Morgan's face, smug and entitled. One of the wine glass hovering over the silk. And one wide shot of my parents sitting there, watching the theft of my livelihood with bored indifference. "I'm documenting the crime scene," I said. I turned around and walked out. Behind me, I heard Morgan laugh. A sharp, brittle sound. "She's so dramatic. She'll get over it by Sunday." They thought they had won because I left. They didn't know I wasn't leaving to cry. I was leaving to make a phone call that would turn their entire world to ash. I sat in the middle of my studio, the silence pressing against my eardrums like deep water. The air usually smelled of cedar and beeswax, the scents of my trade. But today, it smelled like violation. It smelled like the cloying, expensive perfume Morgan marinating in the fibers of my life's work, My family saw this room as a hobby shop, a place where Gabrielle played with scissors and fabric while the real adults did important things. They didn't know that this room was the war room for a multi-million-dollar empire, and I was the general. To the world, and specifically to my family. I was a freelance seamstress. I fixed hems. I adjusted waistlines. I was the practical sister who was good with a needle, but in the industry, I was a ghost. I was the shadow hand behind 3 of the biggest red carpet looks last season. When celebrities wanted grandeur without the ego of a named house, they called my broker. But being a ghost means you don't exist. You get the check, but you never get the applause. That was supposed to change with this dress. The gown Morgan was currently using as a napkin wasn't just a dress, it was a contract. 6 months ago, I had signed a deal with Madame Alizé, the most terrifying and brilliant name in high fashion. She was launching a comeback collection, and she wanted a fresh eye. She wanted me, but not as a ghost, as a partner. That prototype was the physical manifestation of my exit strategy. It was my resignation letter to a life of invisibility. When I signed that paperwork, the pen felt heavier than a sledgehammer. It was the weight of a future where I didn't have to hide. I looked at the empty mannequin and felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't just about the career. It was about the math. I closed my eyes and saw the ledger of my life with Morgan. I remembered the car she totaled when she was 19. Dad said it was an accident. I knew she was texting. I paid the $5,000 deductible because family helps family. I remembered the modeling career in New York that lasted 3 months and cost me $12,000 in rent because she couldn't handle a roommate. I had spent a decade eating toast for dinner and walking to save bus fare, pouring every extra cent into the bottomless pit of Morgan's potential. I starved myself so she could feast. And how did she repay me? By breaking into my sanctuary and stealing the one thing I had kept for myself. They thought they had taken a piece of fabric. They didn't understand they had stolen a corporate asset. This wasn't a domestic dispute anymore. It was a breach of contract with a woman who ate lawsuits for breakfast. I stood up. My legs felt steady for the first time in an hour. I walked over to the desk and picked up the confidentiality agreement I had signed with Alizé. It was thick, binding, and lethal. My family thought I was weak because I was quiet. They mistook silence for submission. But they were about to learn the difference between a seamstress and an architect. A seamstress mends things. An architect builds them and knows exactly where the structural weak points are to bring the whole thing crashing down. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was done being the ghost. It was time to materialize. The vibration of my phone on the desk sounded like a warning shot. I picked it up. It wasn't a text. It was an Instagram notification. Morgan had tagged me. I opened the app, and there it was. A carousel of photos posted 10 minutes ago. The first was a selfie of Morgan in my prototype, pouting playfully, holding a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to rescue art from amateurs. Can't believe I had to fix the draping myself. But a bride does what a bride must do. Number wedding saved, number designer life." She was rewriting reality in real time. To her followers, she wasn't a thief. She was a hero salvaging a disaster. The comments were already rolling in. "So brave. You look stunning, babe. Wait. Did Gabrielle mess it up?" Yikes. I didn't have time to process the rage before the second blow landed. A text message from my father, Robert, popped up at the top of the screen. "Stop calling your mother. She's upset. Also, we changed the locks on your studio so Morgan can get the matching veil. You weren't using it, and it completes the look. Grow up." I stared at the screen, the white text on the gray background burning into my retinas. They hadn't just stolen the dress. They had broken into my commercial space, drilled out the locks I paid for, and raided my inventory like it was a clearance bin. The veil wasn't just tulle. It was vintage French lace from the 1920s, irreplaceable and fragile. That was the moment the last tether of familial guilt snapped. There was no going back. There was no fixing this over Sunday dinner. This was war. I didn't reply. I didn't call the police to report a break-in that would take hours of paperwork and result in a civil dispute ruling. I dialed a number I had saved under "Do Not Call Unless Dying." It rang once. Gabrielle, a voice clipped and accented, answered. "This better be good. I'm in a fitting." "Madame Alizé," I said, my voice steady. "The prototype has been stolen." There was a silence on the line that felt heavier than gravity. "Explain." "My sister took it. My parents facilitated it. They are currently posting photos of it on social media, drinking red wine while wearing it, and they have breached my studio to take the veil. Send me the photos." The line went dead. I forwarded the screenshots of Morgan's Instagram and the photos I'd taken in my parents' living room. 2 minutes later, a black location pin dropped on my map. 20 minutes later, I slid into the back of a matte black SUV parked 3 blocks from my apartment. The interior smelled of cold air conditioning and expensive leather. Madame Alize sat on the other side, wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. She didn't look like a grandmother. She looked like a monarch who had just signed an execution order. She held up her tablet, zooming in on the photo of Morgan. Is that my $85,000 asset standing next to a discount barbecue grill? And she claims she fixed the draping? Alize lowered the tablet. She didn't look angry. Anger is for people who feel helpless. She looked bored, which was infinitely worse. I don't sue family, Gabrielle. Lawsuits are public, messy, and slow. They give thieves a platform to play the victim. So we let her keep it? Alize lowered her sunglasses, her gaze lethal. No. We don't sue. We collect. She tapped the intercom. Security. Bring the van. Pick up on Saturday. The wedding's at the Botanical Gardens, I said. Perfect. Open venue. No exits. She stood. Go home. Don't warn them. Let thieves feel safe. That's when they expose themselves. By Saturday, the garden smelled of jasmine and old money. Beautiful, expensive, exposed. I arrived early, in tailored black, invisible by design. My father, Robert, was charming investors near the champagne fountain. I approached him for one last off-ramp. Dad, tell Morgan to remove the dress, return the veil. We end this quietly. He laughed. We didn't steal anything. We repurposed abandoned property. You should thank us. Then he leaned in. While we were there, Kenneth copied your laptop. Morgan needs a portfolio. You weren't using it. The ground shifted. They hadn't just taken the dress, they'd cloned my files. 3 years of work. Corporate theft. You copied everything? I asked. We made a backup. Don't be dramatic. The music swelled. Guests turned. He smiled like he'd won. It's over, he sneered. Go sit in the back. I didn't. Through the hedges. I saw the black van. 4 men stepped out watching me. The music cut. Silence snapped tight. Madame Alize emerged, flanked by security, walking the aisle like a judge. I need to collect some property, she said calmly. I'm Madame Alize. And you're wearing my $85,000 prototype. Gasps rippled. Exits were sealed. That dress is stolen IP, she continued. And it's unfinished. Morgan froze. The illusion cracked. Return it now, Alize said. Or be arrested for grand larceny, my father shouted. Gabrielle, stop this. I can't, I said evenly. Corporate policy. Morgan fled to the changing tent. Guests scattered. The altar stood empty. Then the tent ripped open. Morgan burst out barefoot, wild-eyed, clutching a knife. She sprinted for the garment bag. If I can't have it, it's trash. Security took her down instantly. The knife fell. Sirens wailed. The groom removed his ring and walked away. I didn't stay. Inside Alize's SUV, my phone buzzed. You destroyed us. I deleted the family chat. Blocked everyone. Are you all right? Alize asked. I'm fine, I said truthfully. Drive. The car pulled away. They wanted a show. I gave them one. Curtain closed.